In a quiet little town surrounded by rolling hills and wide-open fields, life moved at a steady pace. Everyone knew each other's names, and most people lived simple lives filled with work, family, and small joys. Lisa Anderson was one of those residents, a single mother who had faced more than her share of struggles but never let them break her spirit. After losing her husband in a tragic car accident 5 years earlier, Lisa found herself raising 2 young children alone. There were days when she felt overwhelmed, juggling long hours at her job as a waitress while making sure her kids stayed happy and healthy. But through it all, Lisa remained determined to give her children the best life possible. Her mornings always started early. Before the sun rose, Lisa would wake up to prepare breakfast for her son Jake, who was 10, and her daughter Emily, who was 8. She made sure they had packed lunches before sending them off to school. Then she'd rush to the diner where she worked long shifts, serving customers with a smile, even when she felt exhausted. Despite everything, Lisa believed in staying positive. Her neighbors admired her strength and often remarked on how well she handled life's challenges. What no one knew, though, was that beneath her calm exterior, Lisa carried the weight of countless sacrifices and sleepless nights. One crisp autumn afternoon, something unexpected happened that changed Lisa's life forever. It began with an argument between her and Mr. Thompson, a grumpy older man who lived next door. For weeks, tensions had been building between them over a fence that separated their properties. Mr. Thompson claimed Lisa's dog, Max, kept digging holes near his garden, ruining his prized roses. Lisa insisted Max was innocent, pointing out that the holes appeared far from where her dog usually played. The disagreement escalated quickly, with both sides refusing to back down. Neighbors passing by tried to intervene, but neither Lisa nor Mr. Thompson seemed willing to listen. The argument took a turn for the worse when Mr. Thompson stormed into Lisa's yard, yelling loudly enough for half the neighborhood to hear. He accused her of deliberately letting her dog destroy his property and threatened to take legal action if she didn't apologize immediately. Lisa stood her ground, calmly explaining that she hadn't done anything wrong and asking him to stop making baseless accusations. Unfortunately, things only got worse. In a fit of anger, Mr. Thompson shoved Lisa slightly, causing her to stumble backward. Shocked and upset, Lisa called the police to report the incident, hoping it would put an end to the harassment once and for all. When the officers arrived, they listened to both sides of the story. While Lisa explained what had happened, Mr. Thompson countered her claims, insisting that she was the aggressor. To everyone's surprise, the police decided to file charges against both parties, citing mutual disturbance. This left Lisa feeling confused and frustrated. How could she be blamed for defending herself? Still, she trusted the justice system to sort things out. Little did she know, this decision would lead her straight into the courtroom of Judge Harold Green, a man whose reputation for being strict masked a deeper corruption that few suspected. Judge Green wasn't new to the town. He had served as a judge for over 2 decades and prided himself on maintaining order in the community. On the surface, he appeared stern, yet fair, earning respect from many residents. However, behind closed doors, Judge Green operated under a different set of rules. Over the years, he had built a network of relationships with influential families and business owners, using his position to benefit those who paid him favors or bribes. These dealings were subtle, hidden beneath layers of bureaucracy and carefully crafted lies. No one dared to question his authority, not until now. When Lisa's case landed on his docket, Judge Green wasted no time reviewing the details. He already knew Mr. Thompson personally. They attended the same country club and shared mutual friends within the town's elite circle. From the moment the trial began, it became clear that Lisa wouldn't receive a fair hearing. As she sat, nervously in the courtroom, clutching her hands together, she watched as Judge Green barely glanced at the evidence presented in her favor. Instead, he focused intently on Mr. Thompson's testimony, nodding along as though every word were gospel truth. Lisa tried to stay composed as she told her side of the story, speaking clearly and confidently despite her nerves. She described how Mr. Thompson had barged into her yard uninvited, shouted threats, and even pushed her. She showed pictures of the fence line, proving that Max couldn't have caused the damage Mr. Thompson alleged. Yet, Judge Green dismissed her arguments without hesitation, interrupting her mid-sentence to ask why she hadn't apologized sooner. A simple apology could have resolved this matter, he said coldly, glaring down at her from his bench. Lisa felt her heart sink. How could he expect her to apologize for something she hadn't done? Determined not to give in to unfair demands, Lisa refused to say sorry. She believed apologizing would mean admitting guilt, and she wasn't about to compromise her integrity. Unfortunately, her defiance only angered Judge Green further. With a flick of his pen, he declared Lisa guilty of disturbing the peace and sentenced her to 6 months in prison. Gasps echoed through the courtroom as people struggled to process what had just happened. Even Lisa's lawyer looked stunned, unable to believe such a harsh punishment had been handed down based on flimsy evidence and personal bias. For Lisa, the verdict felt like a nightmare come true. As bailiffs led her away in handcuffs, tears streamed down her face, not because she feared jail but because she worried about her children. Who would take care of Jake and Emily while she was gone? Her mind raced with questions and fears as she was transported to the county correctional facility. Inside her cell, Lisa replayed the events of the trial over and over, trying to understand how justice had failed her so completely. Meanwhile, outside the prison walls, whispers of outrage spread among townsfolk who had witnessed or heard about the shocking outcome. Some believed Lisa's story, convinced she had been treated unfairly. Others hesitated, unsure whether to trust their instincts or accept the judge's ruling at face value. Either way, the seeds of doubt had been planted, setting the stage for a fight that would soon shake the entire town. Lisa's first days in prison were some of the hardest she had ever faced. The cold gray walls of her cell felt suffocating, and the distant sounds of clanging doors and echoing voices made it hard to sleep. She spent hours staring at the ceiling, wondering how her life had taken such a sudden turn. Her thoughts kept drifting back to Jake and Emily. Were they eating properly? Did they miss her as much as she missed them? Lisa tried to stay strong, reminding herself that this was only temporary. But deep down, fear gnawed at her, fear for her children's future and fear that the truth might never come out. The other women in the facility noticed Lisa right away. Many inmates had been there longer than she had, and they could tell she didn't belong in a place like this. At first, Lisa kept to herself, unsure of how to act or what to say. But slowly, the kindness of a few inmates began to break through her guarded exterior. One woman named Rosa, who had been sentenced for theft, offered Lisa advice on navigating life inside. "You've got to keep your head up," Rosa said one evening as they sat together in the common area. "Things might look bad now, but you're tougher than you think." Lisa nodded, grateful for the encouragement. Though she still struggled with anger and sadness, these small moments of connection helped her feel less alone. Back in town, the news of Lisa's imprisonment spread quickly. Neighbors who had once admired her strength now whispered about the trial and its outcome. Some believed Judge Green's ruling was too harsh, especially since there was no solid proof against Lisa. Others weren't so sure. They wondered if maybe Lisa had done something to upset the judge, or if she had simply been unlucky. Despite the mixed opinions, one thing was certain. People couldn't stop talking about the case. It became a hot topic at the local diner, in grocery store aisles, and even during school pickups. The more people discussed it, the more questions arose. Was justice really served, or had something else been at play? Among those paying close attention was Mark Reynolds, a journalist known for his sharp eye and knack for uncovering hidden truths. Mark had lived in the town for years and prided himself on staying informed about local issues. When he heard about Lisa's arrest, something about the story struck him as odd. He decided to dig deeper, starting with interviews of people who knew Lisa personally. Friends and co-workers spoke highly of her, describing her as a hardworking and honest person. "Lisa wouldn't hurt a fly," one neighbor told Mark. "She's always looking out for others, even when she's struggling herself." Mark also reviewed court documents related to the case, poring over every detail. What he found raised red flags. There was little evidence to support Mr. Thompson's claims, yet Judge Green had ruled decisively in his favor. Even more suspicious was the fact that Mr. Thompson seemed unusually confident throughout the trial, almost as though he already knew the outcome. This discovery fueled Mark's curiosity, prompting him to investigate Judge Green's background. As he dug into public records and past cases, a troubling pattern emerged. Several rulings showed signs of favoritism toward wealthy individuals or families connected to powerful figures in the community. Could Judge Green have been influenced by outside forces? Mark couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was going on. One evening, while scrolling through social media, Mark stumbled upon a video clip that would change everything. The footage, grainy but clear enough to make out key details, showed Judge Green meeting with Mr. Thompson shortly before Lisa's trial. In the video, Mr. Thompson handed the judge a large envelope, a gesture that looked suspiciously like a bribe. Though the clip lasted only a few seconds, its implications were enormous. Whoever had filmed it had risked a lot to expose the truth, and Mark knew he had to verify its authenticity. He reached out to tech experts who specialized in analyzing digital content, asking them to confirm whether the video had been altered or edited in any way. As Mark waited for the results, he continued gathering information. He interviewed former court staff members who described Judge Green as intimidating and controlling. Some claimed they had witnessed questionable behavior behind closed doors but were too afraid to speak up. Others mentioned rumors of financial dealings between the judge and influential families in town. Piece by piece, Mark pieced together a picture of corruption that went far beyond Lisa's case. Still, without concrete proof, he worried about publishing his findings. If the video turned out to be fake, it could ruin his credibility, and, worse, it might leave Lisa trapped in prison indefinitely. Days later, the tech experts confirmed what Mark had hoped. The video was real. Armed with this bombshell evidence, Mark prepared to release the story. He wrote an article detailing his investigation, including transcripts of interviews, screenshots of court documents, and, most importantly, the video itself. Before hitting publish, he sent a copy of the article to Lisa's lawyer, hoping it might help her appeal. Then, with a mix of excitement and apprehension, Mark uploaded the story to his website. Within minutes, the post went viral, spreading across social media platforms and sparking outrage among readers nationwide. The reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Comments poured in from people expressing shock and disbelief at Judge Green's actions. Local news outlets picked up the story, airing segments that dissected the video frame by frame. Protesters gathered outside the courthouse, holding signs that read, "Justice for Lisa and corruption has no place in court." For the first time since her arrest, Lisa's name was associated not with guilt but with innocence. Strangers began reaching out to offer support, donating money to help cover her legal fees and care for her children. Friends and family rallied around Jake and Emily, ensuring they felt loved and protected despite their mother's absence. Meanwhile, Judge Green found himself under intense scrutiny. Calls for his resignation flooded government offices, and investigators launched a formal inquiry into his conduct. Faced with mounting pressure, the judge attempted to defend himself, claiming the envelope contained nothing more than routine paperwork. But the damage was done. Public trust in him had evaporated, replaced by demands for accountability. As the scandal dominated headlines, Lisa remained unaware of the chaos unfolding outside prison walls. She focused on surviving each day, clinging to hope that somehow justice would find its way back to her. It wasn't until weeks later, when a guard handed her a newspaper smuggled in by a sympathetic visitor, that Lisa learned the truth. Her hands trembled as she read the article, tears streaming down her face as she realized someone had finally exposed Judge Green's lies. For the first time since her arrest, she allowed herself to believe that freedom might still be within reach. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but with the world watching and fighting on her behalf, Lisa knew she wasn't alone anymore. The video of Judge Green accepting the envelope from Mr. Thompson sent shockwaves through the town and beyond. It wasn't just a local story anymore. It had become a national sensation. News channels played the clip repeatedly, dissecting every detail while commentators debated the implications of such blatant corruption. Social media buzzed with outrage as people shared the video alongside hashtags like #SheFreeLisa and Justice for All. The pressure on authorities to act grew unbearable. Within days, higher courts intervened, ordering an urgent review of Lisa's case. Legal teams specializing in wrongful convictions stepped forward, offering their services for free. For the first time since her imprisonment, Lisa felt a flicker of hope that maybe, just maybe, she would walk out of prison soon. Back at the correctional facility, life carried on much the same for Lisa, despite the whirlwind happening outside. She spent her days working in the kitchen, scrubbing pots and pans and doing her best to stay positive. Her cellmate, Rosa, kept her spirits up by sharing stories of her own struggles and reminding Lisa to hold on to faith. "You're stronger than you think," Rosa often said. "This storm will pass." But even Rosa couldn't fully prepare Lisa for what came next. One afternoon, as Lisa sat alone in the rec room reading a worn-out book, a guard approached. "Anderson, you've got visitors," he announced gruffly. Confused but curious, Lisa followed him to the visiting area, where she found two unfamiliar faces waiting for her. A man in a sharp suit and a woman holding a folder filled with papers. The man introduced himself as Daniel Carter, a lawyer specializing in overturning unjust sentences. His colleague, Sarah Mitchell, was a paralegal assisting with Lisa's case. They explained that they had seen Mark's article and wanted to help get her released immediately. At first, Lisa struggled to believe them. After months of feeling abandoned by the system, it was hard to trust anyone claiming to fight for her. But as Daniel laid out the evidence, the viral video, witness testimonies, and patterns of Judge Green's misconduct, Lisa began to feel a glimmer of optimism. "We're going to do everything we can to get you home to your kids," Daniel assured her. For the first time in weeks, Lisa allowed herself to imagine reuniting with Jake and Emily. Still, she knew the battle wasn't over yet. While Lisa's legal team worked tirelessly behind the scenes, public outcry reached fever pitch. Protesters gathered daily outside the courthouse, chanting slogans and holding signs demanding accountability. Some even camped overnight, refusing to leave until justice was served. Local businesses showed their support by displaying posters in their windows, urging residents to stand with Lisa. Even strangers who had never met her joined the cause, moved by her story and the injustice she faced. Schools organized fundraisers to support her family, and anonymous donors contributed money to cover her mounting legal fees. The community rallied together in ways no one expected, proving that sometimes tragedy can bring out the best in people. Inside the courtroom, however, things weren't moving as quickly as everyone hoped. Appeals take time, especially when dealing with high-profile cases involving corrupt officials. Judge Green, now suspended pending investigation, fought back fiercely, denying all allegations and accusing Mark of fabricating lies to ruin his reputation. His lawyers argued that the video lacked context and shouldn't be considered definitive proof of wrongdoing. Meanwhile, investigators dug deeper into Green's past, uncovering more instances of unethical behavior. Financial records revealed suspicious transactions linking him to powerful figures in the town, including Mr. Thompson. These discoveries added fuel to the fire, strengthening Lisa's case, but prolonging the process. As weeks turned into months, Lisa remained patient, clinging to the belief that the truth would eventually set her free. Her children visited regularly, bringing drawings and letters to cheer her up. During these visits, she reminded them to stay strong and keep believing in fairness, even when the world seemed unfair. Jake and Emily tried to stay brave, though they missed their mom deeply. Neighbors helped care for them, ensuring they didn't fall behind in school or miss out on activities. Their resilience inspired many, turning Lisa's personal struggle into a symbol of hope for others facing similar battles. Meanwhile, Mark continued updating the public on new developments in the case. His articles became a lifeline for those following Lisa's journey, providing transparency and keeping the momentum alive. He interviewed experts on judicial reform, highlighting flaws in the system that allowed corruption to thrive unchecked. His work earned praise from activists and advocacy groups, who credited him with sparking important conversations about accountability and integrity. Yet Mark knew his role was only part of the bigger picture. The real heroes were Lisa, her family, and everyone fighting alongside them. Finally, after months of relentless effort, Lisa's appeal reached the state Supreme Court. The hearing drew massive attention, with reporters crowding the courtroom and cameras stationed outside. Lawyers presented overwhelming evidence against Judge Green, including the damning video and testimony from former court employees who confirmed his unethical practices. Mr. Thompson, under intense scrutiny, admitted to bribing the judge in exchange for a favorable ruling. The truth was undeniable. In a landmark decision, the court overturned Lisa's conviction, declaring her innocent of all charges. Cheers erupted in the courtroom as tears streamed down Lisa's face. She hugged her lawyers, overwhelmed with gratitude, before rushing to embrace Jake and Emily, who had been waiting anxiously in the front row. Walking out of the courthouse, into bright sunlight, Lisa felt like she was stepping into a new chapter of her life. Cameras flashed, capturing her triumphant smile as supporters cheered loudly. Strangers approached her, shaking her hand and thanking her for inspiring them to stand up against injustice. For Lisa, this moment was bittersweet. While she was finally free, the scars of her ordeal would linger. She had lost precious time with her children and endured hardships no one should have to face. But she also gained something invaluable, a renewed sense of purpose. Determined to turn her pain into progress, Lisa vowed to use her experience to advocate for change, ensuring no one else suffered because of a broken system. That evening, surrounded by loved ones and friends, Lisa celebrated her freedom quietly. At home, there were hugs, laughter, and promises to move forward together. As she tucked Jake and Emily into bed, Lisa whispered words of reassurance, telling them how proud she was of their strength. Though challenges lay ahead, she knew they would face them as a family, and somewhere deep inside, she felt a spark of hope, not just for herself but for everyone who believed in fairness, honesty, and the power of standing up for what is right. The days following Lisa's release from prison were a whirlwind of emotions. On one hand, she felt an overwhelming sense of relief to be back home with her children, sleeping in her own bed and waking up without the cold walls of a cell surrounding her. On the other hand, she couldn't shake the weight of what she had endured. The nights were restless, filled with dreams that replayed moments from her trial, Judge Green's harsh words, and the loneliness of being separated from Jake and Emily. Yet every morning brought new reminders of how much support she had. Friends stopped by with meals, neighbors offered to help with errands, and even strangers sent letters expressing admiration for her courage. It was clear that Lisa's story had touched hearts far beyond her small town. As life slowly returned to normal, or at least as close to normal as it could get, Lisa began thinking about the future. She knew she couldn't simply move on as if nothing had happened. Her experience had opened her eyes to the flaws in the justice system, and she felt a deep responsibility to do something about it. One afternoon, while sitting at her kitchen table sorting through piles of mail, Lisa came across a letter from Mark Reynolds, the journalist who had exposed Judge Green's corruption. In the note, Mark thanked her for inspiring so many people and invited her to speak at an upcoming event focused on judicial reform. At first, Lisa hesitated. Public speaking wasn't something she enjoyed, and the thought of reliving her ordeal in front of a crowd made her nervous. But then she remembered all the people who had stood by her during her darkest days, the protesters, the donors, the lawyers, and realized she owed it to them to keep fighting. Mark himself had become deeply invested in Lisa's journey. Since publishing his article, he had received hundreds of messages from individuals sharing their own stories of injustice. Many described cases similar to Lisa's, where judges or officials abused their power, leaving ordinary people trapped in impossible situations. These accounts reinforced Mark's belief that Lisa's case was not an isolated incident, but part of a larger problem. He spent countless hours researching judicial misconduct across the country, uncovering disturbing patterns of bias, bribery, and favoritism. His findings painted a grim picture of a system that often failed those who needed it most. Determined to spark change, Mark partnered with advocacy groups to push for reforms, using Lisa's story as a rallying cry for accountability and transparency. In the meantime, Judge Harold Green faced mounting consequences for his actions. Once revered as a pillar of authority in the community, he now found himself vilified and ostracized. Investigations into his conduct revealed a web of corruption stretching back years. Financial records showed payments from wealthy families, seeking favorable rulings, while testimonies from former court employees detailed instances of intimidation and coercion. The evidence was undeniable, and charges were filed against him for abuse of power and accepting bribes. As news of his arrest spread, the town reacted with a mix of anger and disbelief. Some expressed shock that someone they trusted could betray them so thoroughly, while others felt vindicated, believing justice had finally caught up with him. For Mr. Thompson, the neighbor whose accusations started the chain of events, things unraveled quickly. After admitting to bribing Judge Green, he became a key witness in the investigation. Though cooperating earned him leniency, his reputation was ruined. Neighbors avoided him, businesses refused to serve him, and his once pristine garden was vandalized repeatedly. People saw him as a symbol of greed and entitlement, traits that had cost an innocent woman months of her life. Mr. Thompson moved away shortly afterward, unable to face the shame and hostility that followed him everywhere he went. While Lisa appreciated seeing accountability served, she didn't dwell on revenge or bitterness. Instead, she focused on healing and rebuilding her life. She reconnected with old friends, spent quality time with her children, and gradually resumed her routine. Still, there were moments when the trauma surfaced unexpectedly, a sudden noise making her jump, a stranger's glare triggering anxiety, or a memory of prison bringing tears to her eyes. During these times, Rosa, her former cellmate, became a source of comfort. Though separated by distance, they stayed in touch through phone calls and letters, sharing stories and offering encouragement. Rosa reminded Lisa that survival was a victory in itself and urged her to celebrate every step forward, no matter how small. As weeks passed, Lisa grew more confident about participating in efforts to improve the justice system. She attended meetings with local activists, learning about policies and practices that contributed to corruption and inequality. She listened to experts discuss ways to hold officials accountable and ensure fair treatment for everyone, regardless of wealth or status. These conversations inspired her to take action. With Mark's guidance, she began drafting speeches and preparing to share her story publicly. It wasn't easy. Each word carried the weight of her pain and resilience. But Lisa understood that her voice mattered, not just for herself, but for others who might feel powerless in the face of injustice. The day of the event arrived sooner than Lisa expected. Held in a large auditorium, the gathering drew hundreds of attendees, from concerned citizens and legal professionals to politicians and journalists. As Lisa walked onto the stage, the room erupted in applause. For a moment, she froze, overwhelmed by the sea of faces staring back at her. Then, taking a deep breath, she stepped up to the microphone and began to speak. Her voice trembled at first, but as she recounted her journey, from losing her husband to raising her children alone, from standing firm in court to enduring months behind bars, it grew steadier. She spoke honestly about the fear, frustration, and hopelessness she had felt, but also about the kindness of strangers, the bravery of whistleblowers, and the power of collective action. By the end of her speech, the audience was on its feet, cheering and wiping away tears. That night, as Lisa lay in bed reflecting on the day, she realized something important. Her fight wasn't over. While exposing Judge Green's corruption had been a victory, true change required ongoing effort. She thought about the people she had met along the way, the lawyers who worked pro bono, the protesters who braved the cold, the donors who gave generously, and promised herself to honor their commitment by staying involved. Whether through speaking engagements, supporting advocacy groups, or mentoring others facing similar struggles, Lisa knew she had a role to play in creating a fairer, more just society. And though the scars of her past would always remain, they served as a reminder of how far she had come and how much farther she could go. In the months that followed Lisa's release, her life began to take on a new rhythm. She returned to work at the diner where customers greeted her with warm smiles and words of encouragement. Some even brought flowers or small gifts as tokens of support. At first, Lisa felt self-conscious about the attention, unsure how to respond when strangers thanked her for being brave or called her an inspiration. But over time, she grew more comfortable accepting their kindness, realizing it came from a place of genuine admiration. Her co-workers, too, rallied around her, making sure she never felt overwhelmed as she eased back into her routine. They took turns covering her shifts when she needed extra time with Jake and Emily, allowing her to focus on rebuilding her family life. At home, things were slowly returning to normal, or at least a version of normal shaped by everything they had been through. Jake and Emily seemed happier now that their mom was back, but Lisa noticed subtle changes in them. Jake, once carefree and playful, had become quieter and more thoughtful, often retreating to his room after school. Emily, who used to love running around outside, clung to Lisa more than before, afraid to let her out of sight for too long. These shifts worried Lisa, but she understood why they happened. The months apart had left scars on all of them, and healing would take time. Determined to help her children process their emotions, Lisa started setting aside evenings just for family talks. They sat together in the living room, sharing stories, laughter, and sometimes tears. Slowly, the walls between them began to crumble, replaced by trust and understanding. Meanwhile, Lisa continued working with Mark and other advocates to push for judicial reform. Their efforts gained momentum as more people joined the movement. Inspired by Lisa's story and eager to see meaningful change, town hall meetings became regular occurrences, drawing crowds of concerned citizens ready to voice their opinions. Lawyers, activists, and politicians collaborated on drafting proposals aimed at increasing transparency in court proceedings, implementing stricter oversight for judges, and providing better resources for those wrongfully accused. Lisa attended these gatherings whenever possible, offering input based on her own experience. Though public speaking still made her nervous, she found strength in knowing her words could make a difference. One evening, during a particularly heated town hall meeting, tensions flared between supporters of reform and skeptics who believed the system wasn't broken, just misunderstood. A man stood up, arguing that focusing on isolated cases like Lisa's distracted from bigger issues. "Not every judge is corrupt," he said loudly. "We shouldn't throw out the entire system because of one bad apple." His comments sparked murmurs of agreement among some attendees, but others pushed back passionately. Lisa listened quietly, her hands gripping the edge of her seat. When the moderator asked if anyone else wanted to speak, she hesitated for a moment before raising her hand. Walking to the microphone, Lisa felt her heart pounding. She looked out at the crowd, seeing familiar faces alongside strangers curious about what she had to say. Taking a deep breath, she began softly. "I'm not here to say the whole system is broken," she started, "but I am here to tell you that it failed me, and it's failing others too." Her voice grew stronger as she spoke, recounting the details of her case and emphasizing how easily corruption could slip through the cracks without proper safeguards. "It's not just about me," she continued. "It's about everyone who doesn't have a voice, everyone who can't fight back. We need to fix this, not because it happened to me, but because it shouldn't happen to anyone." The room fell silent as her words sank in, followed by thunderous applause. Lisa's speech marked a turning point in the campaign for reform. People who had previously doubted the necessity of change began reconsidering their stance. Local newspapers published editorials praising her courage, while social media buzzed with renewed calls for action. Even some skeptics admitted that hearing Lisa's perspective firsthand had opened their eyes to the urgency of the issue. Lawmakers took notice, introducing legislation designed to address the gaps in accountability and fairness that Lisa's case had exposed. Though progress was slow, the momentum kept building. fueled by Lisa's determination and the growing coalition of supporters behind her. Amidst all the activity, Lisa also found time to reconnect with Rosa, her former cellmate. Their friendship remained strong despite the distance, sustained by frequent phone calls and letters. Rosa often shared updates about life after prison, describing the challenges of finding steady work and rebuilding relationships. Lisa listened, sympathetically, offering advice and encouragement whenever she could. In turn, Rosa reminded Lisa to be patient with herself, acknowledging how difficult it must be to adjust to freedom after such a traumatic experience. Their bond served as a lifeline for both women, proving that even in the darkest places, connections could blossom into something beautiful. As spring approached, Lisa decided to organize a community event aimed at celebrating resilience and unity. Held at the local park, the gathering featured music, food, and activities for families. Vendors donated goods, volunteers pitched in to set up tents, and neighbors came together to create an atmosphere of joy and hope. Lisa saw it as a way to thank everyone who had supported her while also fostering a sense of solidarity within the town. During the event, she stood on a small stage, addressing the crowd with heartfelt gratitude. "None of us are alone," she said, her voice carrying across the park. "When we stand together, we can overcome anything." The success of the event reinforced Lisa's belief in the power of community. It also strengthened her resolve to keep fighting for justice. She knew the road ahead wouldn't always be smooth. There would be setbacks, disagreements, and moments of doubt. But she refused to give up. Every letter she received from someone sharing their own struggle, every hug from a neighbor expressing thanks, and every milestone achieved in the reform campaign reminded her why she kept going. For Lisa, the journey wasn't just about fixing a broken system. It was about proving that ordinary people could spark extraordinary change. By summer, significant strides had been made. New laws requiring greater transparency in judicial decisions were passed, and training programs were implemented to educate officials about ethical conduct. Judge Green's case served as a cautionary tale, prompting discussions about integrity and accountability in positions of power. Though Lisa knew these measures wouldn't eliminate corruption entirely, she believed they were steps in the right direction. More importantly, she saw how her story had inspired others to speak out, creating a ripple effect of courage and advocacy. As Lisa watched Jake and Emily play in the backyard one sunny afternoon, she felt a deep sense of peace. The scars of the past hadn't disappeared, but they no longer defined her. Instead, they reminded her of her strength and resilience. She thought about all the people she had met along the way, the ones who had lifted her up when she couldn't stand on her own, and smiled. Together, they had turned pain into purpose, transforming a personal tragedy into a beacon of hope for countless others. And though the future remained uncertain, Lisa faced it with unwavering optimism, knowing she wasn't alone in the fight for justice. As the months rolled by, Lisa's life settled into a rhythm that felt both familiar and new. She continued working at the diner, where customers still greeted her warmly, but now she also spent her free time speaking at schools, community centers, and conferences. Her story had become a powerful tool for change, inspiring people to believe in their ability to make a difference. Each speech was different, tailored to the audience, but the core message remained the same. Justice isn't just something we wait for, it's something we create together. Lisa's confidence grew with every event, and though she sometimes felt nervous before stepping onto a stage, she reminded herself why she was there. It wasn't about fame or recognition. It was about giving others the courage to stand up when things seemed hopeless. Jake and Emily began thriving again, too. The shadow of fear that had lingered over them slowly lifted as they adjusted to having their mom home full-time. Jake rediscovered his love for soccer, joining a local team and practicing tirelessly after school. Emily filled sketchbooks with colorful drawings, often gifting her artwork to Lisa as a way of showing how much she appreciated her. Family dinners became sacred moments, where laughter replaced silence and stories replaced worries. Lisa made sure to listen closely to her children, encouraging them to share their thoughts and feelings without hesitation. These conversations helped heal old wounds, strengthening the bond between them. Mark stayed in touch, continuing to report on issues related to judicial reform, while keeping Lisa updated on developments and policy changes. His articles highlighted success stories from communities implementing transparency measures, showcasing how small steps could lead to big improvements. He often credited Lisa for sparking a national conversation about accountability, saying her bravery had inspired countless others to demand better systems. Though he occasionally joked about retiring his pen, Mark knew there was still work to be done. Together, he and Lisa formed an unspoken partnership. She spoke from the heart, while he amplified her voice through his writing. The town itself transformed in subtle ways. People who had once been indifferent to local politics now attended city council meetings, asking questions and pushing for reforms. Neighbors organized workshops to teach residents about their rights and how to navigate the legal system. Businesses displayed signs supporting fairness and equality, turning storefronts into symbols of unity. Even the courthouse underwent renovations, not physically, but in spirit. Judges and officials participated in ethics training programs, striving to rebuild trust with the community. While no one expected perfection overnight, the collective effort showed promise, proving that change was possible when everyone worked toward the same goal. Lisa's friendship with Rosa deepened as well. Despite living far apart, they maintained a close connection, exchanging letters and phone calls regularly. Rosa shared updates about her job search and plans to enroll in night classes, determined to build a brighter future for herself. Lisa encouraged her every step of the way, reminding her that resilience was a muscle strengthened by adversity. In return, Rosa offered wisdom born from her own struggles, helping Lisa process lingering emotions tied to her imprisonment. Their bond served as a testament to the idea that even in the darkest places, friendships could shine like light. One crisp autumn morning, Lisa received an invitation that took her breath away. A national advocacy group dedicated to criminal justice reform asked her to speak at their annual conference in Washington, D.C. The thought of addressing thousands of people terrified her, but she couldn't ignore the opportunity to amplify her message on such a large platform. With Mark's help, she prepared extensively, crafting a speech that balanced vulnerability with hope. When the day arrived, she stood nervously backstage, clutching her notes and trying to calm her racing heart. As she walked onto the stage, the roar of applause nearly overwhelmed her. But then she saw faces in the crowd nodding in agreement, smiling in encouragement, and she found her footing. Her speech resonated deeply, touching not only those in attendance but also viewers watching online. Social media lit up with praise, and news outlets covered her appearance extensively. For many, Lisa's words crystallized what they already believed. Ordinary people held extraordinary power to effect change. Afterward, attendees lined up to thank her, sharing personal stories of injustice and gratitude for her courage. Some promised to join the movement. Others vowed to start similar initiatives in their own towns. Lisa left the conference feeling energized, knowing her efforts were planting seeds that would grow into lasting impact. Back home, life carried on with renewed purpose. Lisa collaborated with local leaders to establish a mentorship program for families affected by wrongful convictions. The initiative paired participants with volunteers who provided emotional support, legal guidance, and practical assistance. Seeing the program come to life filled Lisa with pride, especially when she witnessed its positive effects firsthand. One mother, whose son had been falsely accused of theft, credited the program with helping her navigate the appeals process successfully. "You saved us," the woman told Lisa tearfully during a meeting. Lisa shook her head, insisting it was a team effort, but secretly she felt a swell of fulfillment knowing she had made a tangible difference. Years passed, and Lisa's influence continued to ripple outward. Schools invited her to speak to students about perseverance and integrity, emphasizing the importance of standing up for what's right. Local businesses honored her contributions by naming scholarships after her, awarding funds to young people pursuing careers in law or public service. Even strangers approached her in grocery stores or parks, thanking her for giving them hope during tough times. Through it all, Lisa remained humble, deflecting praise onto the community that had supported her journey. Judge Green's downfall served as a stark reminder of the consequences of corruption. Convicted of bribery and abuse of power, he served time in prison before being disbarred permanently. His name faded into obscurity, mentioned only in cautionary tales about the dangers of unchecked authority. Meanwhile, Mr. Thompson disappeared from public view entirely, his reputation irreparably damaged. Though some might have sought revenge, Lisa chose forgiveness instead. Holding on to anger she realized would only weigh her down. Instead, she focused on building a future defined by compassion and fairness. On quiet evenings, Lisa often sat by the window, watching Jake and Emily play outside. She thought about how far they had come since that fateful day when her world turned upside down. The scars of the past hadn't vanished, but they no longer controlled her. Instead, they reminded her of her strength and the importance of fighting for justice, not just for herself but for everyone. Lisa understood that true victory wasn't about defeating enemies. It was about lifting others up, creating a world where no one had to endure what she had. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting golden light across the yard, Lisa smiled softly. She didn't know what challenges lay ahead, but she faced them with unwavering optimism. Her journey had taught her that even in the face of darkness, light could prevail if enough people dared to carry the torch. And so, with her family by her side and a heart full of purpose, Lisa stepped boldly into the future, ready to keep fighting for a fairer, kinder world.